Father, thank you for the day. Thank you for all you've done for us and with us, to us. We love you. We honor, praise, glorify, and magnify you. In Jesus' name we pray and say amen. So we are still trying to get through the crisis situation in week two. Is going down to week four now to talk about the four crisis. So maybe we'll get through it, maybe we won't. But announcements, we are in our class for identity, still doing that. Our Python book starts on Saturday. Sharon said there's 7 people that signed up for that class. Don't know who they are. Don't know if they're all abroad or if I have to be there for breakfast on Saturday. We'll find out when Sharon gives me the numbers. Thank you for your donation and supporting the ministry. As I said, we are really on part four of this lesson. I thought I updated this, but which is going to push us down. Instead of ending in September, we're going to end in October since we've added a couple weeks, so we are pushing this out a little bit, and it doesn't matter. We'll take as long as it takes to finish the book. So any questions or anything about the covenant class? When I did look at the recording, there was some things that Tim mentioned about fruit and the fruit that needs to be relevant in the marriage, fruit of the spirit and fruit of the flesh. And I'm not exactly sure if everyone really understood that, and I wasn't sure if we all understood the difference between a contract marriage or commitment versus a covenant. So I just put a couple slides in there to address that. When you think about a contract or commitment in a relationship, we're really talking about a commitment or contract between two people versus a covenant marriage is a contract or is a promise between three people, that is the husband, wife, and God. That you really begin to include God in your relationship, not just ancillary, not just sometimes, but He's interwoven in your relationship. You're praying for each other, you're seeking Him for guidance, you're seeking Him in good times and in bad. He's really an included part in the marriage. In a contract or being in a committed relationship, generally it's talking about to seek your own interest versus you seek God's will, what's best for all parties involved. That's going to be another difference between a commitment. It's not just a piece of paper, which some people think marriage is just a piece of paper. In contracts, you negotiate the terms. But in a covenant marriage, you really want to serve one another. And in a contract marriage, you want to keep a track of a performance. You kind of keep, he did this, I do this, she did that, I do this, and it's a performance base. But in a covenant marriage, you keep no record of wrong. You know, love forgives all. If you think about Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind. You know, we want that love to keep no contracts, no ticks of wrongdoings, because when we begin to keep track of wrongdoings, we kind of get weighted down with the wrongs and the rights of the situation, and you feel like I'm doing all this and they're doing nothing. In a covenant marriage, you keep no records because that way you can stay light. In a contract marriage, you punish failure versus forgiving failure. No one's going to be perfect. No one's going to be 100% right. So you have to learn to forgive. In a contract, you seek to win versus your goal is to worship, worshiping God, serving one another in honor and respect. In contracts, it's a professional relationship versus a personal relationship. Kind of like those terms. This is another little thing about covenant versus contract. You can see that there's differences thought versus feelings, relational versus irrational, and so on and so forth. Really, contract marriages or marriage of convenience is really based on our insecurities, based on instead of being based on our security. Um, so that's kind of a two or three slides on the difference between a covenant marriage and a marriage of convenience. When you think about the work of the flesh and the work of the spirit, when you're working in the flesh, you're really doing things based on Galatians 5 for sensual reasons in the flesh, for false worship, relational, and excess. Those are the works of the Spirit. I know Tim talked about that. I wanted to kind of bring that home to what that actually means as far as what are the works of the flesh. Where works of the flesh, if you're dealing with adultery, if you're dealing with lust and passions, those are things that are sensual. If you're talking about false worship, there's 100 million different idols that we could serve. And witchcraft is just another way of control. That talks about controlling people, be it with sex, controlling people based on getting angry or withholding sex. All of those are ways of control. We don't think of witchcraft as being, spells and casting spells on people. There's a lot of different ways witchcraft can happen because it's really about control. If you don't get it your way, you will manipulate until you get it your way. That's works of the flesh. And then relational, you have hatred, wrath, strife, dissensions, all types of separations and envying, jealousy, all of those types of things that hinders a relationship from trust, open, honest relationship. And then excess, that could be excess in food, orgies, all excess of any types are really works of the flesh. If we're operating in any of these things, we're not operating in the spirit. If you're in an argument and you retaliate or respond in any of these ways, you're not responding in the spirit of God, in the ways of God. If you get angry and you leave the house or you begin to act out on certain ways, we're really acting out in the flesh. And then when you talk about the fruit of the spirit, this is really how we want to respond. I'm not going to read this, but I will have Paige send this out. You want to respond in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. A lot of people say, well, I have self-control. I can control this or I can control that. But I say that if we could have self-control and we didn't need God, it wouldn't be a fruit of the Spirit. So we need God to help us to restrain ourselves and our emotions and our actions and our desire. A lot of times when we get angry or we begin to act out, it is out of our emotion and out of some hurt or out of some wound. But the Spirit, if we turn our control over to the Spirit, He helps us with our emotion. He helps us with our actions. He helps us with our desire. So we don't lash out and say things that are wrong, do things that are wrong. So self-control is really a fruit that we want to harness ourselves, even though we may be wronged, even though we may be treated badly. Self-control allows us to harness that in Christ and take those things to God and respond in a way so that in the morning or whatever, that we won't feel like, oh man, I wish I wouldn't have said that. I wish I wouldn't have done that. And have those kind of regrets of the spur of the moment. Those were the slides I had for last week's class. Do you have any questions or comments on covenant marriages and relationships or anything that was spoken of in the prior classes? If not, we'll go on to new material. No questions? Everybody's good? All right. So, we talked about the two crises. We talked about um, honor for several weeks. Now we're going to be talking about helplessness, which deals with our fear and feeling alone. A lot of times in relationships, we can feel alone, we can feel that we're not supported. And when we get that way, we can begin to act out or do things that we normally wouldn't do because hopelessness begins to reach for things that are mainly act in desperation. And this is the second situation of relationships that are in crisis. Hopelessness crisis is about feeling despair or the absence of hope. It's like you're trying to figure out this relationship and it's just a maze. You try to do this and it doesn't work. You try to do that and that doesn't work. You try to do all these different things and you continue to feel like nothing is working. And relationships can start to feel void of fulfillment, void of the joy that happens when your relationship initially starts. And that sorrow and begins to set in. And when we begin to feel desperate or absent of hope, that's when the enemy can come in and begin to draw us away from the relationships that really make difference and a commitment in our relationships. And when you think about hopelessness, and then one of the topics that were talked about is people getting in toxic relationships. We can get in this state of hopelessness when we're in toxic relationships. And toxic relationships can start with lack of support, where you feel like you're doing everything and the other person's not doing anything. That can become toxic, and you continue to be in these relationships where you're not getting supported, where you're not getting the things that you need because you're pouring out and doing everything for everybody else, but you're not getting fulfilled. And you continue to get in those relationships over and over and over and over again, and they continue to fail. Well, that's because it's toxic, and we have to start getting that toxicity out of our system so that we can begin to have healthy relationship. We can get in relationships with cause jealousy or envy, have toxic communication, which is always yelling at each other, or the other case is being silent and never saying anything. Everything's on eggshells. You can't really talk about anything. When you begin to be dishonest with yourself or dishonest with the other person, controlling behaviors that can be abusive a relationship, then abuse can come in forms of financial abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. I mean, there's so many different kinds of ways that people have controlling behaviors, but it's still toxic. Resentment or patterns of disrespect. Oh my gosh, I saw so much disrespect on this last cruise that my head was spinning. There was no respect in so many different ways. People weren't respecting themselves. It was, like I said to Shelley, Carnival Cruise was a circus for me. It was just crazy. Constant stress, ignoring your needs, is another a sign of toxic relationship. Negative financial behavior, spending because you just want to spend, or as a way of coping with things, you just begin to spend. Lost relationships, lack of self care, hoping that things change, and always thinking that, okay, maybe if I do this, maybe if I do this, things will change, and walking on eggshells in a relationship. All of this can lead to the crisis of hopelessness. When we have toxic relationships, that toxicity really kills us more. And when it kills us, of course, it's going to make a break in the relationship. So you have to realize what's toxic in your relationship and why you continue to draw yourself to things that end up in these cycles, ending up in cycles of hopelessness, ending up in cycles of thinking that maybe it can't be any better, or maybe I deserve this, or maybe, whatever the thought is, that we get into this cycle of toxic, broken relationships instead of digesting why we're being pulled to such relationships and beginning to change, beginning to set new boundaries, begin to setting new goals for ourselves. beginning to not have the comfortable relationship that starts off comfortable but ends up being very toxic. Many times we start off comfortable, and that comfort is the toxic stuff. We have to be willing to be uncomfortable, to stretch ourselves, and to learn to love ourselves in a different way so we're not drawn to the same hopelessness. That's what we're talking about in this hopelessness, the crisis of hopelessness. When you think about this, there's increase in coping mechanisms, and these coping mechanisms can be in a whole lot of different ways. They say there's 9 different types of hopelessness. This is just psychology. Alienation, you feel like you're all alone, that no one was going to understand. And so we begin to go inside of ourselves because why bother? No one really cares anyway. You have a powerlessness. I think that's the main thing in hopelessness, that you get powerless, that you feel like you just have no choice in the matter and you might as well just stay in a relationship because this is the best that I can do. You should never feel like that in a relationship. You always have power. You always have power to walk away. You have power to make a change. You have the power in your hands. You have to do something with it. You kind of get this doom and gloom that, it's like a gray cloud that's over you. You feel really oppressed when you feel hopeless, when you in this hopeless relationship. You're not inspired. You're not inspired to do better. Your dress starts going down. You start not having self-care. You just start being hopeless. You feel like you're captive, that you're held captive by the relationship. You're held captive in your emotions, that there's just no way to go in your relationship. You feel limited, helpless, and forsaken. You feel like that you're just forgotten and nothing else matters. So if you have this crisis, toxicity leads to these places of hopelessness. It's not too late to get out. It's not too late to change. It's not too late to find yourself, to get out of these types of patterns. In the book, it talked about 3 areas in marriage that when you get to this place of hopelessness, where I got this from is, I don't know what pages it's from, but it says in there from Proverbs 14:8, in a marriage, the wise person gives thought to their ways, but the foolishness of fools is deceit. So it talked about the 3 areas that can lead to this place of toxic or hopelessness in this cycle: the fear of man, feelings of women, and figure it out, is what I said. And so in the book, he had kind of 2 patterns, one dealing with men and one dealing with women. And so the fear of men for women, when you get in fear, she attacks with her words when it hurts. So when something hurts, the fear that's in her begins to attack him with words. And these attack on words, the way he responds, the way he receives this when he has fear, is criticism, is contempt, emotionally vulnerable to the words. So when she's saying things to attack him, he's feeling criticized, he's feeling contempt, and he's feeling the words that are hitting him makes him very vulnerable, and he begins to shut down because he doesn't want to strike back out of fear of losing the person, or out of fear of saying things, or just shutting down. Fear of men for her, hates being controlled and put on display. He feels defied, and despised when you begin to act out in a particular way. That's how he's going to respond. May lash out when they feel unloved. He feels disrespected, and actions will isolate and will retreat. And so you can see fear has 2 different faces, what it looks like for her and what it looks like for him. She wants to talk about the conflicts and get her feelings out. He doesn't want to talk about it because he feels like when you talk about it, it's because he's being attacked and being very combative. And so her main fear is being rejected, and his fear is being disrespected. And so he retreats. And so if you see these patterns in your relationship where you are attacking, where you're feeling controlled, when you're feeling these ways from the book, it says the fear that we have here is rejection for her and disrespect for him. How are your thoughts if you're dealing with this fear of men regulate with anyone on the line, or does it regulate or register with anyone on the line?
For
Any,
me,
go ahead.
I think it's interesting that like I'm afraid of rejection, but what that looks like is on the him side.
Mm,
Like I don't attack with words. I don't do the lash out stuff. But I do like the shut down, doesn't want to talk about it, all that stuff,
mm-hmm.
retreat, isolate, emotionally vulnerable to words like that all is me, but I don't do the her side. So that's interesting.
So does the guy do the her side? Does the guy
Oh,
attack with words? Does the guy lash out and feel unloving? Does they want to talk it out and then you don't? Does the guys you tend to
just Roger or just
huh?
deal. I feel like my last relationship, yes, but the other ones were like me.
Mm, okay. So in feeling you feel your fear is being rejected, but your actions are not out of being disrespected, but because of the other things that are there on the him side, is what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do you think of anything that you could do to stop this fear of being rejected? Because when you stop the fear of being rejected, you won't go into the isolation and retreat mode because you've overcome that fear, because you know that you're accepted. You're accepted by God, you're accepted by yourself. And so what I see your hand, Late. So whatever other people do, if you know you're accepted, you won't fall into this trap and feeling
Yeah.
hopeless. Does,
Yeah, that is definitely something that I need to figure out. Um, I completely agree with what you're saying. I don't know how to like I don't know where that comes from. I don't know where it comes from in order to get past it. But I
okay.
do recognize it.
Okay, so one thing you can do is when you're feeling rejected is really lean into it. You might feel rejected at work, or you might feel rejected at any point. You can feel rejection from a lot of different places. Lean into it. Why are you feeling like this? What is my expected outcome? What would be a better outcome than feeling like this? What could have been done different in me so that I'm not feeling this? What would make me feel accepted right now? Lean into those types of questions so that you can begin to find root causes or solutions that will help you feel accepted as opposed to just sitting in this rejection.
Okay, you're going to have to give me those questions again, but yes, I that's great. I can definitely do that.
Okay. Late. And does anyone else have anything to help Paige out in that area before we go to Late? Okay, Late.
Mine's is from a different page, the comments that I had, or
Earlier Paige?
yes.
Well, how early?
Um, where you were talking about, I think there, I think the next one is okay. The one you were just at.
This one?
After the next one with the cloud, yeah. I was gonna say that it just seems like there's a little piece that's missing because where somebody else wouldn't be taking on the alcoholism or drugs, they would be me who would gamble or who would overindulge in other areas like food. And so, and then it seems like from what you're saying that this despair is like the hopelessness, like hopelessness is the teenager of despair, if that makes sense. Like it grows up, in my mind because um hopelessness is kind of a passiveness, and then the despair is a more urgency. It's just when you're in a desperate situation, or it just seems more extreme. That's my
Mm-hmm.
best way that I could say it. But when I was looking up the synonyms and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing sadness and despondency.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did not know what despondency was. I figured it was meant disconnected of some kind. But I seen also it said loss of hope or courage. And I thought, wow, that would be really helpful to say because in my relationship decisions that I made, I felt weak, and I felt like I didn't have any, and I know I'm not weak, but in that situation where I was vulnerable, where this person had things over my head, where I wanted to stay in a relationship with this person, I felt a weakness. I felt a lack of strength based on not being able to really, really move, speak, be how I wanted to be because of the eggshell situation that was on the previous page,
Mm-hmm.
where you're just trying to keep things together for peace sakes, because
Mm-hmm.
it can really go up a couple notches, and it can be off the Richter scale, and you just want to avoid blowups and DV and all of that kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thought, wow, what a great word that we haven't spoke about yet, and it's a lack of courage. And I just wanted to say that I just didn't have the courage to speak up. I didn't have the courage during a lot of those times to make the declarations of who I really was
Mm-hmm.
in God. And it wasn't until the end of the relationship that I started fighting back with using the word and speaking my affirmations, only because I felt like this is it for me, and if I don't say something, like this is gonna kill me, type of situation, that I have to just say something to pull myself out of this extremely dark hole that I felt like I was in. But something just to say I'm not trash, I'm not, whatever this person was, this spirit inside of this person was trying to make me feel like I was. And so I just wanted to share the word about courage because that jumped out at me, being weak and having no strength in situations, because in that hopelessness it made me reach out to God more. It made me fight to hold on to who he said I was and who I am in him, and lift my head up based on that. And I just, that courage gave me the strength to finally, after years of turmoil and toxic relationships, I was able to leave the situation. For me, that was the best choice. And so um just that highlighted of that no, having no courage and strength, I wanted to throw in there. And then the option of there are other things that we overindulge in. It doesn't just have to be drugs or alcohol, or that was it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That is so true about there's so many ways of self-destruction. I think the thing the thing about hopelessness is that it leads to self-sabotage. And it's self-sabotage because of the way that we're feeling about ourselves, about our situation, that we just want it to stop. We are people that are people of hope, and the courage is so important. Um, you have to be not only courageous to get out of a bad situation, but you also got to be courageous to look at the situation for what it is, as opposed to what you hope it to be. Many times we get stuck in relationships because we just hope for change. We just hope that it'll get better. If I just do this, if this would just happen, instead of looking at it for what it is and looking at it through true eyes and having the courage to see, because everyone else sees it. We just don't see it, and we don't want to trust our friends telling us what we're in because they just don't know. And so we really do have to understand that it does affect us in a lot of different ways, and we begin to reach for a lot of different things. But it's all self-sabotage. Hopelessness in is to get us to self-sabotage. That's the spirit that wants to do it. It really wants you to self-sabotage.
Another thing, um, another thing that I just thought about is it's one thing to identify this hopelessness traits and responses in yourself, but it's another to recognize that in a potential partner. Like if they are going through these things, they don't know or understand that they're going through these things, but like knowing how to identify if they're acting out of these hopelessness things or if that's really how they are. You know what I mean?
Well, if they are a depressive person or an alcoholic or uninspired or feel powerless, those things should be saw in the courting time, um, and not overlooked. If for weeks they just want to shut down and don't want to talk and then don't want to tell you about it for weeks at a time, and then they spring back as if nothing happens, they don't address it, they don't talk about anything, that's a red flag. That's a red flag that something's not quite right. Because if they're shutting me out for weeks and they're not talking to me, and one of my boundaries is open and honest communication, that's a boundary violation, and that should raise a flag to you that something's not right in in him, or did I do something? Those questions should be asked, not just overlooked. A lot of times we just overlook it and saying, "Oh, well, he just had a bad day." Well, yeah, but after 3 weeks of not talking and being in a slump, and another thing you can actually see is cycles. If you realize that once a month, around the third week of the month, this cycle starts, or maybe they have a 2 month cycle, you should be able to register in you that these things are happening in a cycle, that you can now identify these things, because things just don't generally be hidden for years. They usually come up and they worsen once they get more comfortable with you. So, any other comments on this slide or this one? Okay. So, when we think about, or at least when I thought about this, the outcome of the fear of men is lack of connection. You lack intimacy when we have these fears and he's feeling disrespected and she's feeling rejected. The outcome of this particular crisis is you don't have connection. You can't be intimate with someone that you feel disrespects you, or when you're feeling rejected, you can't feel connected. And so this is something, if you're dealing with this is going to be the outcome of your relationships. Disconnection and lack of intimacy. And we so want to be intimate with our partner. We so want to be connected with our partner, and we can't because of this fear. So, Paige, I would say, as she's identified with this, I'd say really trying to find out when you're being rejected, Where did I lose my connectivity? Where did I lose my ability to be intimate with people? Because when you find that reasoning, when you find that trigger and you heal that trigger, you should be able to feel accepted and know that you don't have to have this fear of being rejected. Feeling of women was the next one. Again, it was a two-part thing that he put in the book. She confronts to connect. So she gets in her feelings and she confronts to connect. And for him, confrontation causes him to disconnect, longs to resolve and reconcile. And he wants to know why you're arguing for about things that are forgotten. He kind of swept it under the rug. Why do you keep bringing this back? We've dealt with this. Just let's forget about it. Confront is a complaint, and confrontation to him is a fight or an argument. But it's not, it's a compliment because if you're willing as a her to fight for this relationship, that you're willing to put an effort into it. But when you confront, that confrontation to him feels like you're attacking him and fighting. So you can see that the difference when we get into our feelings of the man and the woman, how these two sides are not complementary. They actually are combative to one another. Their self image is impacted by his neglect, and he remains quiet to remain safe. He doesn't want to hurt her image. So instead of doing that, he just secludes and goes in. Criticism can help change, she thinks, but criticism to him says, I'm wrong. Scolding feels like the correct thing to do, but to him, it feels like you want to be his mother and feel left out and alone, and he doesn't want to express the feeling. So you have these two con. Go ahead, Amanda.
It's Paige,
Uh,
but so how are you supposed to resolve things? If a guy feels this way when you're confronting when you're confronting them about something, like how are you supposed to resolve stuff?
They say things in the book like the way, and it's not just in the book, it's the way that you come at things. It's in a soft, gentle way as opposed to being head on, screaming and yelling. It's coming at him in a way or coming at her in a way that's less confrontational. And they give a couple different ways in the book of, and we'll get into that about how to frame questions, how to address different things so that you're not so combative. The first thing is to realize is that when you come at it with your feelings, he's coming at it with the feelings that you're receiving and will respond in a way that you're not thinking that they will respond. That's the thing that you have to, if at this point, realize in the book is that your way of getting the result is getting the opposite result that you want. And so we have to learn a new way to come at it. And that's what we will learn throughout this book. I know that's not helping right now, but I'm laying the foundation that the book laid out.
I feel like it was Latay who brought up answering Paige's question, how do you say things if that's how they're going to like take it? And your response was like how you said, your tone, all of that stuff. I think Latay it was that had mentioned something about like the sandwich method,
Mm-hmm.
and she gave an example of, you had a great question during the class, but you kind of got off topic, but then you came back and you wrapped it up and it was really good. So kind of doing throwing the bad in there, but delivering it in a way where it's not all the bad stuff and it's more easily digestible.
You can. That's a good observation, and yes, that is a way to do it. Um, and other people may have other things that they can offer. Saying positive things is definitely having conversations and saying things that are positive so that the only time you talk is not when something is negative. Does that make sense? A lot of times we have light talks and we don't encourage and we don't build up. And then when we're in the heavy conversation, there's no money in the bank for you because they're already at a low point because you haven't made any love deposits. So having conversations that kind of like the sandwich method that you've already built in some positive stuff so the negative doesn't have the most as much impact because they don't think only time you're talking to me is when I'm doing something wrong.
So I just want to interpret what you said to make sure that I heard it correctly. So instead of when there's an issue using the sandwich method, then are you saying that just randomly have conversations about nothing but good stuff?
Yes.
Like, we had a good day today. I appreciate you did blah 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 blah. So that way 3 weeks later you can take out three negatives from this quote unquote bank that you're speaking of because you already deposited five and there still will be two, metaphorically speaking, leftovers. What you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's so that every conversation that you have is not a negative. So every time you say, let's talk, they're like, oh boy, what have I done again? You know, that
That's good. That's good. I don't even think about having conversations about the good stuff. Like, let's talk about all of the good things that have happened. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
right.
that makes sense. Yeah, and I definitely can you just please?
Mhm.
I definitely can see how that would make it so they're not already looking at the conversation of having their guard up because every time we have a conversation, they're being attacked. So
Right.
that is good advice.
Right.
Appreciate it.
Right. Go ahead, Latae.
So the way that I'm understanding it, and what you had said last time was about, you talked about timing.
Mhm.
You talked about not having those conversations when you're flared up or addressing it right then and there type thing.
Mhm.
Um, and I thought about when I think it was Amanda talking, uh, before Paige, I'm not sure, but either way, I was thinking about the soft answer, turning away wrath.
Mhm.
How in being soft and kind and lowering your tone, that makes such a big difference. And the reason why I failed anger management 3 times was inability to lower my volume and calm the situation down. I would excite the situation or invoke the demon. I don't mean to say it like that, but I got it pumped up. I got it. I work. I added fuel to the fire, basically, for lack of a better term. And then I heard this song today. I was working at the salon, and it was a worldly song. It was like on the jazz station or something. But this guy, he kept emphasizing um, that he wanted a lady that was sweet. And I thought to myself, golly, I just am not sweet. And I'm not trying to be funny, but I just feel like sweet and soft and love are all like synonyms. And I don't feel like I'm that. And I don't like that. I don't, to me, that does the whole role reversal thing, which Paige had touched on, um, feeling different, more like the man side and stuff. Because if somebody is saying something, I'm like, man, please, you can go on about your business. I don't care. You get it's 12 more like you. Don't you ever for a second get to thinking you're irreplaceable. I mean, those are the kind of songs I would be thinking and quoting from. But that whole turn in the attitude and the mind frame is not really me. I realize that it's something else, not from God, because that's not who I want to be. That's not the image that I want to portray. And that's not the kind of person that I want to be. It's not the kind of wife, lover, or mom that I want to be. And that's who I am. And so I feel like all the way to the beginning, which you were teaching, Apostle, when I seen the fruits of the Spirit, if we were truly walking in the fruits of the Spirit, we wouldn't. I know things happen in relationships, but we wouldn't be in these effed up situations because we wouldn't have been impulsive. You know, we would have used that self control and not slept with this person, which often locks me into a relationship. Either I just say on the first try, you got to go, or oh no, I'm stuck with this. I feel locked in with them. I might as well keep the momentum going. And so I just wanted to say how um me as an African American and a Hispanic person, I've always been taught from both sides of my family to be kind of spicy and to be kind of, I don't know what the word is, but it's something like you have to get back, to be able to speak up and to stand up for yourself and to not be ran over.
Hmm.
And that has turned me kind of hard. And
Hmm.
that's not what I want. I want that sweet, that soft side. And I just don't know where to get her from. I don't know if she's dead. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if this chick is gone for good or how that can be restored, but it's ugly, you guys, and I do not like it. And I know that it's not from God. And I'm just sharing because I know other people feel like this. There's somebody out there that feels like this. And I just am thinking, I know all hope is not lost for us, so I just don't want to be this manly woman. I just wanted to share that.
Well,
Yeah,
what,
I feel like that. Sorry, mom. I feel like that is feminine. Like a lot of women have lost the ability. I was literally just talking to my sister about this. We've lost the ability to be feminine. That softness, the easygoing, the calm, cool, collective. I feel like the meekness, all that, that's what it means to be a woman. And we've lost that because, circumstances, situations, what have you. But I feel like that's what it is.
Des?
Yeah, I with exactly what Latae is talking about.
You're cutting in and out, Des. Des? I don't know if you're still there, Des, but you're cutting in and out.
I'll text her and let her know we can't hear her.
Okay. Yeah, that is something in our society now where because of the turn, women can do it all. They can fry the bacon or whatever that song was. They can kind of do everything. And really kind of stepping back and allowing um, a man to be a man and and you be okay with that. That is an art that has been lost. I know I tell people all the time, if I'm walking into a gas station and I have pants on, a guy doesn't even recognize me. But if I have a dress on, he'll run to the door to open it for me. And I allow him to do it and I thank him for it. They want to feel that shrivel, and it can be not have to be a man in a suit. It's just soon as I look feminine and look like a girl, they they run to help me. And so a lot of times, I can get that door myself. What are you trying to do to open the door? And it confuses them. They don't know if they should open the door or not open the door. But I make it a point every time when they do something that's gentlemanly to thank them. Oh, Shriveri's not dead. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. And they just beam up. And so it's just really starting to be soft with strangers, being soft with people and kind of getting in practice, recognizing when a man does something that's nice for you, when he apologizes. So if I'm walking down the street and he gets on the outside and you know, near the street so that I'm protected. Oh, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Even with my coworkers, if a man does that, I acknowledge that they actually know how to treat a woman. Sometimes we don't even know how to be treated as a woman because we're so hard. And so, really paying attention when guys do pay attention to you, acknowledge it because then that will make you feel more feminine, make you feel like you can be protected by this guy. But if you don't even acknowledge it and recognize it in your normal life, then you're not going to recognize it when a guy comes into your life because you're so used to being hard and just doing everything yourself. Don't be used to doing everything yourself. Thank him for doing the things that he's doing. Appreciate the things that he's doing. That's going to make all the difference in the world. Des, are you back?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
I put it in the chat also that I was just saying I could relate to Late in kind of coming off as that harsh woman and not being able to find that femininity. But a lot of the parts that I've had to look at in myself was a lot of untrust from men. And the untrust part really allowed me to put barriers up. Um, and that's something I really need to face and work on with God is breaking down those barriers and allowing myself to open back up again, but setting boundaries and not getting into all of the same past things too. So it's a lot.
Yeah. Any other?
Being,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
being single also played a part in that, just being single and being divorced. And even though I wanted to clear something up because, I felt really horrible when um Apostle and his wife were on there last time and they said that they have viewed the conversation. I just wanted to say that I haven't been sexually active in years. So when I'm referencing those times, you guys, this wasn't like last week or anything. But I felt so humiliated. And it was just a callback for me to say, you need to control your mouth. You need to not be disclosing all of that and be more chaste. And there's a lack of that. But I was just gonna say, and being more single for so many years and stuff, and having to do a lot of things myself. When I did go on a date, I remember feeling weird and feeling stupid because the person was opening doors for me, and I was about to do it myself or walking ahead and getting ready to push the door open and them hurrying to open it, and just feeling really out of sorts, because I wasn't used to it, just having to pump my own gas, people saying, "What are you doing? Why are you going to pump your own gas?" Stuff like that I just really have to get used to and put, to put into practice or whatever. But it's just kind of like one of those things where this whole independent woman thing happens and you're just like, I don't need a man. I just want a man, and that kind of thing. And I don't want that to be my story. So I just wanted to express how I kind of got into a system of doing things, and it's just out of necessity, not because I want to be like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of us has done things because we were maybe forced to make things happen. But when we get into this if we get lack of care, and we don't have a companion at this point, we want to we want to feel care and we want to have be cared for. And when we come up with this bravery, strong, I can do all things and I don't need you, that makes them feel like, well, you don't need me. I want to go with someone who needs me. And it's even to a point where Um, we make fun of women that are um, kind of not strong-willed or strong in their emotions, like somehow they're less of a woman. But that's not the case. And I'm not saying that we can't be strong. I know I'm going to have a very strong personality to deal with me, but I also know how to be soft. Think I know how to be soft. I can say that because I'm single, but maybe I really don't know how to be soft. But I do believe that I can be soft, and I do, you know, appreciate men that are men, that are taking care of their families. I make it a point that when men are doing that, I make it a point to let them know how great and how wonderful that it is that they're doing that. And it makes them feel really good about themselves. Having spiritual sons and having men that I can like speak into their life, saying those things really makes a difference to them. And so for us, take it down a notch. We can learn to take it down a notch. And how is that going to make us less of a person if we're doing it by choice because we don't want to be hard? I was going to say before, my nickname was Rock. I mean, because nothing could hurt me. And I told you before that the thing about my identity of being Rock is nothing was able to get in, but also nothing was able to get out. I was in my own prison from being hard. Nothing could hurt me. Nothing. And I didn't want to be Rock anymore. Somebody asked, how do you change your from being hard? The way I learned not to be Rock is I had to redefine what rocks are for. Rocks, yes, can be breaking and can crush things, but I also learned that rocks can be cleansing and very refreshing and cleaning. And I know that the kid's dad and I, near the end of his life, that we began to talk to one another and flow with one another, and actually became friends because of the softening. We could talk to one another. We would talk to one another about the kids and talk to one another. If there was anything that I needed, I could call him and he'd be right over here to help out. It is because of the softening that we were able to do, and I was able to do, to start that friendship between the two of us, not just because of the kids, but because we had some relationship breaches that had to be resolved. And so softening makes a big difference in a man's life, to open up, to talk, and to allow, us to talk to one another. Having him cry and talking, I mean, that was just like, I never thought I'd hear this big guy cry. I mean, it's amazing when you soften up what that does to a person, to a guy, to a man that's used to seeing this hard person soften. It makes a big difference that you feel cared for and that you're a champion. A guy wants to know that you're his champion, not his competitor. That's the bottom line. If he thinks he's got to compete for your affections, you have to compete for their time, you have to compete for he's going to not want to go into that race because he wants to feel like he's the champion, that he's the best thing in your life. And when you don't make him feel like that, then you're going to lose him. Okay? Um, so that's the second one in this three-part series. The third one is figure it out, he says. Um, commanded to respect, which is unnatural. You have to figure this out, but I think he put this in here because the thing that he wants us to learn in this last thing is that our way is to have mutual gain. It's not that you win or he wins. He's commanded to love because it's unnatural for him. I mean, God is telling you to respect and him to love because it's not natural. I think Late said something like, it doesn't feel natural. Well, doing this respect thing isn't natural. That's why it's commanded. And you're going to need God to help you. he's going to need God to help him with this because what we want to do in our natural self is not natural what the other person needs. And so we're going to need God. Remember, I said a covenant relationship requires God access to your heart, to your emotions, to your will, so that you can do this thing, not because you have so much self control, because the fruit of the Spirit is self control. He's going to give you the ability to respect Him unconditionally, overcoming that feeling that He must earn respect because you don't want Him to think that his fear that she has to earn love. You don't want to have to earn your love no more than he wants to earn respect. You just want him to love you, and he just wants the respect. Feeling correction overrides the command of to respect. And so we have to understand that our natural feelings to want to correct the situation and to correct him really in the situation is going to really feel like contempt. We have to overcome our natural feelings to be a mom. Because when you're in a relationship, you're not a mom. You're a wife. You are a mother. You correct your kids. You don't correct, you can't raise your man again. And we joke about that. Like when, we'll say to women, man, you have him trained well. That's really not a compliment because his training happened as from his mother. You shouldn't be training him, and you shouldn't feel proud of someone saying that you have him trained well. That is not really a respectful comment to make if you think about it. He fears fear of contempt overrules his love. So when he feels contempt, he's not going to want to love you. Just like when you're correcting him, you're not going to feel like respecting him because that's why you're correcting him, because you feel like something needs to change in him. And if you're saying that something needs to change in him, you're not respecting who he is. Criticism, when you criticize, he has to understand it's a cry for love. And his criticism is a sign of contempt. We have to learn the other person's language. When we begin to learn the other person and see this relation from his eyes, then you will be able to act differently. But the only way that we can see our relationship from the other person's eyes is we have to heal. We have to understand our flaws. We have to understand what our triggers are. We have to understand what's making us feel hopeless or alone and getting in toxic relationships so that we can stop our own behavior. And when we stop our own behavior, we can then get in relationships that are healthy. Look beyond the feelings to respect and embrace unconditional. That was the one word I said that we have to learn to embrace. Looking beyond our fears. He's looking beyond his fears. You're looking beyond your feelings so that you can embrace unconditional respect, unconditional love. See what you are doing to him. That's going to be so important that you see what your words and your actions are doing to that other person. Do you really see him? Does he really see you? Does he really understand you? Does he want to understand you? Do you want to understand him? The only way to stop this hopeless crisis is to have a relationship where there's mutual gain, is the goal. Because if we don't, this is how we're going to have learned companionship. We will have companionship when we look at the other person through the other person's eyes, not our eyes. It's not only the way you see things in relationships. When you have a covenant, you got two eyes that you're looking, how he sees it, how God sees it. And if you're a guy, it's how she sees it and how God sees it. But many times we're only looking at the relationship through our own eyes. It looks like this to me, therefore it is. We have to expand our vision. What does this look like to God? What does this look like to him? And then make a decision based on mutual gain so that companionship can begin to happen. Any questions on that?
I don't have a question, more of a comment. All of that is really great. I 100% agree. Um, I also wanted to say that in order to have that type of healthy relationship, because that to me is what a healthy relationship would look like, but you would have to have someone who's willing or who's able to have those conversations, like someone who has the ability to self-reflect like that, someone who's able to be emotionally vulnerable, and someone who's just able to have those types of conversations and self-reflection to be able to look past the fears. I mean, even admitting that you have the fear to begin with. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, that,
Yeah.
go ahead. Uh, uh, Go ahead. Who else was talking? Okay, that's what's going to be so important about the courting or dating or whatever you guys call it now in your generation, about getting to know the person, getting to be friends with the person, getting to know who they are, being around him and their friends, and getting to know the person, being friendly with the person, as opposed to being a girlfriend, just being a friend, wanting to spend time together as friends, and you'll get to know that person. They'll feel comfortable with you, you feel comfortable with them in order to share those moments. Now, you also going to have God in those times, because you can have a guy that's playing you, or you can have a girl that's playing you and just saying all the right things and doing all the right things to trap you. That's why it's so important to have discernment. If you don't have discernment, I know Dave talks all the time, and Late too, a lot of people for that matter, that before they marry anyone, they're going to bring them to me so I can discern. And I know Latay's brought people to me, and I'm like, nope, that's not the one. Kick them to the apostle. This is, nope, it's not the one. 5 days later, apostle, you were right. Because when you're in the moment, they look like the right guy. They're saying the right things. But there's a discernment that an outsider, you don't have to bring it to me, bring it to a friend of yours that can discern that person or have another view of that person that you might not see, that can help you in that time when your feelings are all wrapped up in it, that you just have something that's just not quite right. They're not for you. And trust that person, even when you have your skin in the game. You have to trust those people that you call friends, and accountability people, to help you through these times of relationships, because this can be a lifelong relationship. It can be a lifelong of hell, and you don't really want that as in a relationship. So how do you become a companion? I think that was kind of a question that had been asked several times in here, and I had put an acronym here: CARE. Okay. Communication is going to be the first thing. Express gratitude and appreciation. Speak kindly. Share your feelings, your needs, your perspective. Listen attentively and recognize they have their own perspective and feeling. And being willing to listen to their perspective, being willing to listen to their feelings, being willing to be open to change how you may think and how you may communicate, simply because you are an willing vessel to really be a companion, particularly if you're already married. Um, Having that open communication and changing your communication so that you can really understand your mate in problem marriages, or even if you have a good marriage, communication is going to be your first thing in care. If a man has shut down, That's not a very good sign because it's hard to get them to jump start again. You really want to keep that open communication line. Avoid negativity. Refrain from using hurtful and disrespectful language. Move past disagreements and work towards reconciliation. This is going to require you to forgive and apologize. And remember the language of apology. Not always is this, I'm sorry, an apology for someone. So, one of the things is really learning their language of apology. Do they expect you to show something different? There's 5 levels of apology. Learning their language of apology. And I can go give you those slides again so that you can understand that or get the book so that you can understand what's your apology language. Maybe they're saying they're sorry, and you have to teach them that sorry's not good enough for me. I need you to do blah, 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 and communicate what's going to make you feel like they really are sorrowful for hurting you or disrespecting you or whatever the case may be. You have to know first how you're going to receive that apology because if you don't know, the other person's not going to know. That's why I gave you that test so that you know your language of apology. Um, Take the test. Have your friend take the test so that y'all know how you each want to apologize. I think I put that in the first or second week. Take the test and find out what's going to make you feel like you're on the right path for reconciliation. Responsibilities and interests. Show genuine interest and passion and goals. I remember in the beginning of our relationship, man, I didn't like going to air shows. I didn't like sitting out in the sun. I didn't like doing any of that stuff. But he liked sitting out in the air shows. I used to do karate and I used to do the circuit. He didn't necessarily like going to karate, to the circuit, but we had each other's interests in mind. So I'd go to the air show, I'd go camping, and he'd go to my fights. And he'd sit in the gym all day and watch me fight. And I'd sit in the hot sun all day and watch him do cars. In the beginning, you had those interests. I don't know, somewhere along the way, we lost the interest in each other's interests, but that has to continue on, not just in the beginning in the relationship, but those interests and the responsibility to go with that other person is going to be very important to show care in your relationship. Be trustworthy and dependable for that person. Work together as a team to manage the household. If they're better at doing the bills, then let them do the bills. If they don't know how to do the bills, then you need to work so that they will release the checkbook so that y'all don't go bankrupt. But these interests and responsibilities, you got to talk about it because that's going to be a sign of care. And then emotional and empathetic with your partner. Honor physical, emotional, friendship, and digital boundaries. We have to understand you have to keep your location on, for example, as a digital boundary, so that they know where you are all the time. Not because they want to check up on you, but if something happens, they can know where you are. Not every second of the day, but it's always good to know where your mate is. So if something happens, prioritize boundaries so that you know what's a good boundary. You have your friends, he has his friends. Sometimes you have friends together, sometimes you have separate friends. You have to be able to like your spouse's friends. But if there's a friend you don't like, you can't trash them because that's that person's friend. And you have to understand in your partnership, you're not going to see 100 eye to eye 100% of the time. And so you have to kind of live with some things. I know when I came into my relationship, I had all boyfriends. They were all male. I was a tomboy, so I had a lot of guy friends. After a while, Irvin didn't like that I had all these guy friends. He didn't want those guy friends, and so I cut them all off because he didn't like the fact that all my friends were guys. And so that was a sacrifice that I made early in the relationship to cut those guys off because it didn't make him feel comfortable, no matter how much I explained it to him that hey, these are like my brothers. But It is what it is. Prioritize your physical affection and quality time. Yes, Late.
I got a problem with the sharing the address thing. I mean, the location thing. And the reason I got a problem with it is when I went through DV class, they
Mm.
said that that was a form of domestic violence to keep tabs on people and their whereabouts. And I don't like it. I'm not a kid. They're not a kid. If they say they're at work, then that's where they're at. Now, if they're going on a trip, out of the country or out of the state or something, I'm not with them. That's a different thing. You know what I'm saying? If they're going on a work trip, or they're going camping or it's something separate from me and we need to keep, in contact or vice versa, that's different. But I don't want nobody knowing my whereabouts 24 hours a day. And I don't have any secret things going on. I just don't want anybody saying, my mom, for example, I share my location with my mom because I want her to know that I'm safe and, whatever. And she calls me and is like, "What are you doing at such and such? Getting tacos again?" And I'm I know it sounds crazy, but I'm like, Mom, I'm not even at that place. I'm at a light by there. I've never even been in there before. She was like, "Oh, well, that's what the location says, so I'm just checking. You've been there for a while." I'm like, "Oh my God." But the point of the matter is I don't want to be hounded down like that. I don't want it. I don't feel like I need to be that accountable to anybody
Charger
except
and the
God.
charger and off the floor.
Oh,
Okay, okay, sorry.
yeah, I
Um,
just feel like I don't need to be that accountable to anybody except God. If that's good for other people's relationship, that's fine, but not for mine. Another example, people giving each other their phone codes. Somebody could be asking me to pray for them about cervical cancer or something. My man doesn't need to be having my code to know what's going on in our prayer group and private stuff like that. Like, I'm just not with all that. Maybe that's too old fashioned or whatever, but I don't think that's right. Sharing empathy and caring about people's feelings and empathizing with them, feeling how they feel, showing that you care about their feelings and stuff. I am like, yes, yes, that's really important. But knowing my every move, that is what was taught to me in domestic violence class, that when people keep tabs on you like that, that's a red flag.
All
The
my
people
friends have my location.
when people when people keep tabs on your I hear you. When people keep tabs on your spending, that's another thing that they were saying was a red flag. If they're getting rough with you during sex, or they like to play rough, period, to be watching out. Those are domestic violence signs. If they're counting your gas mileage or checking your gas, you know what I'm saying,
yeah,
your mileage
Well,
on your
I
car.
feel like there's a difference between having someone's location and tracking a person. Like, I have all of my family members' location. I'm not crazy about it and looking at their everywhere, every second of the day, checking. That's crazy. But just having it so that I know, for safety reasons, that
Uh-huh.
if I needed to know where they were, I could see where they are. Sorry, see where they are. I can understand it. And in that environment of a domestic violence class, yes, of course, that would be considered a bit too much if they're tracking your every movement. But tracking your every movement and having your location for safety purposes are two completely separate things.
yes. In domestic violence situations, you have to understand, and coming out of domestic violence, I can
Mhm.
understand your concern about the control and relinquishing that control to a person that has abused you. And we're talking about relationships where trust has been established, healthy relationship, not toxic relationships, and a the whole point of this relationship is becoming one, where when your heart hurts, their heart hurts. It's coming into that bond where you are one person, and that takes a lot. And when we come out of an abusive domestic violence or toxic relationship, that seems like something that is impossible to actually happen. But I know that it can happen simply because I believe God's word. And God's word says that the two will become one. And that's one in everything. Not only for safety, I, and I'm sure I don't want somebody tracking me, my every movement either. No one wants that type of control. But if you're with a person and that is happening, then you need to get out of that relationship because that is another domestic violence relationship. But we're talking about healthy relationships, which is where we're trying to get to. And so, how do you, Late, not you don't have to answer this, but how do we at all of us, because we all have the trust issue, how do we get to the point where we can trust ourselves with another person? The only way that you can, well, the only way I learned to trust myself with another person is to first put my trust in God and knowing in prayer that God's got me. And, you know, it doesn't really matter what that other person says or what that other person does. As I'm moved by God and trusting Him, I have to trust the situation that I'm in with Him in a relationship. Now, I haven't had this 58-year marriage, 60-year marriage to say that this is true, what I'm saying. All I have is God's word that I believe that two people can become one. And when we become caring for one another, that we learn how to come together in a relationship, that this is a healthy relationship. And in healthy relationships, we're not going to be tracking one another. We're not going to be looking to show up at a. I was watching a movie on the boat, and this lady and this couple were in an argument, and the husband said went back home to his mother for the weekend, and the wife was on a beach and she was at a church service. This was at the end of the movie, and the husband showed up at this church service on the beach, and the wife was like, "Wait a minute, how did you know that I was here?" He said, "Silly, you had your location on, and I just came to the location where you were." And it was so romantic that, they were having this argument and they found each other through their tracking device. Now that's a little silly, little silly thing, but can you imagine if you're at work or you're at a store and they show up to give you flowers or they show up to surprise you? How's that going to make you feel? Is that going to make you feel like they're tracking you, or are you going to feel like you're loved and cared for? It's really what you put into this relationship is what you're going to get out of this relationship. Getting someone that is caring and loving and caring about you is what healthy relationship that we're trying to build here. That's why we're in this class, so that we can find out why ways we're broken, which this first part was talking about. We're going to build towards more healthy ways of learning and getting this love and respect. But the first part of this class is really trying to uncover areas of brokenness in us so that we can begin to heal ourselves. So when this healthy person does come into our life, we don't scare them off because we're being mannish or working in our old way. Is your hand still up, Lute, or is that from the last time? Okay, I'm not sure, but I think that was all that I had. So that's where we were. These are the four crises that we wanted to learn. You wanted to learn about cycles. We talked about that. We talked about toxic relationships. We talked about no competition in our marriage. We talked about tone. We talked about dysfunctional background. And we talked about not getting people cut off. So these were the things, topics that you said we wanted to learn. And these are the chapters in which we covered them so far. Okay? Just wanted to keep track of that. Oh, that was Paige will get this out to you, talking about boundaries of health relationships, singles, and just ways to honor your husband, ways to honor your wife if you're a man, love message alerts, and singles. So you can read these articles and hopefully they will help you in your search for healing. I'll get that out to Paige so she can get that out to you. Okay. Any questions, comments, or concerns? We finally got past the first two chapters in the book. Took a little longer, but I think the time spent was good. No questions, comments?
I
I
have a comment. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
My comment is that, sorry. My comment is that this class, even, 3 weeks or whatever weeks that we're in, has really helped me because I am able to identify, like, it, I'm able to identify the disrespect, and me being able to identify that is allowing me to, like, dig deeper into why I feel that way, or why the other person, or if the other person feels disrespected, I can, inquire and ask those questions as to why they feel that way so that we can get the dialogue and stuff going.
Mm,
It's put things into a perspective for me, um especially if someone gets upset. It makes me think automatically if I did something that made them feel, make them feel their shame or whatever.
mm.
So yeah, I appreciate the class, and I've already learned a lot. So
Good,
thank you.
good. Thank you. Shelley?
Yes, I wanted to go back to you were saying about having, how to have a conversation and diffusing it and speaking, calmly. One of the things in the book that they referenced that I really liked was one, letting yourself calm down and just giving it time, but never let yourselves go to sleep without coming back together. And I think it was in Ephesians 4:26 where it says, "Do not let the sun go down on your anger."
Mm-hmm.
And how just being able to maybe reintroduce the conversation just after both of you have settled down, and just making sure you do kind of, hopefully go to bed and at least apologizing to one another. And one of the examples in the book that they gave that I really liked is, I think he posed the question to her and her to him. He would say, are you feeling unloved right now in this situation? And if so, I'm sorry that, you felt that I have made you feel unloved. Or she would ask him, are you feeling disrespected in this right now? And apologizing for that. If they, hopefully they say, yes, that's how they felt. So I liked that dialogue, and I thought those were good examples of that. And I loved your talking about having just positive, thankful conversations throughout when things are not heated and you're just in having conversations. So I liked that too. And thank you for taking time when I know you aren't feeling well. And I hope you get lots of good rest and wake up feeling much better tomorrow.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, can you imagine if every night before you went to bed you said something nice to your spouse and made that the habit? I mean, how much would you look forward to going to bed at night? You know? I mean, how often do you go to bed week after week and there's just silence? Starting the starting the day or ending the day with, "Hey, hun, I still think you're the sexiest man on earth." How you think that's gonna make him sleep or make him get up in the morning? Just doing little things. I remember I would used to put little notes in his bag when he would go away and just hoping he'd find them. And sometimes he wouldn't find them for 2 or 3 trips. Just doing little things just to let them know that, you're thinking about them during the day, calling them during the day just to say hi. Just doing stuff that seems silly now, but those silly things begin to, as I said, put things in the bank. And then you stop doing them because life happens. Don't let life happen and come in between the care that it takes for a relationship to happen. Because if you don't care, someone else will. And we don't want that to happen. Any other comments or concerns? All right, Father, we thank you for the day. We thank you for this class and what we're learning so that we can have loving and respectful relationships so that our relationships are enduring into the end. We thank you, Father, for everything that you're doing in us and through us through this class. We love you, we honor and praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Charlene.
Thank you.